both of us probably growing up had these limits around people who had money and thinking, are they good or bad people? Are they controlling? Are they mean to people? You know, if you have money, can you be a good person or have some spiritualness to you? Or is it only one or the other? You can either be Mother Teresa and serve, you know, you can only be Jesus and wash people's feet and be, you know, humble, or you're this money hungry individual, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that when I was growing up, at least, I grew up in an environment where the people around me believed that if someone was wealthy or someone was rich, that they must have done something dodgy or bad to get there.
Like illegal or sketchy or...
Yeah, it must be sketchy or illegal activities, or they must have stabbed someone in the back, or they must have hurt someone, or they must be taking advantage of someone or manipulating someone.
Using, abusing.
That's the only way they could have got there.
Really? Yeah.
And generally, the idea that we all know of that money is the root of all evil, I think that was something that I was exposed to a lot as a child, where a lot of people around me believed that, and we weren't wealthy. So we weren't in a position of financial strength. And often my extended family and others would look to people with wealth. And if we would admire that or see something, they would be quick to like dampen that and be like, no. They just do all this kind of stuff. And so I think there was always that negative view towards people who are rich.
How do we get to a place of, should we admire people that are wealthy? Should we look to that and say, it's really cool what they've built? Should we admire the accomplishment of amassing a ton of wealth? Or should we, or is that not something to admire?
You always ask the best questions, man. This is like,
you know what I mean?
That's such a great question.
Do you admire the results, or do you admire the person they've become on the journey of accomplishing the results and the actions they had in order to get there?
So this is not an interview, Lewis, so I'm going to make you answer that question first. I want to hear your thoughts, because I've got my answer. I know what I want to say.
Well, I think this is interesting, because I was going to ask you about...
It's not an interview.
No, I was going to have a conversation about how you first... Because I remember having this conversation years ago with you, where you never thought that like making money was for you. You were just like struggling in New York City, trying to make it, and kind of live like month by month in a sense. And you told me you kind of had this limit around, can I be spiritual and make a lot of money? Can I serve the world, make wisdom go viral, and also is it okay to receive money? Is it okay to like charge what I'm worth or charge more for my services? So I remember having this conversation with you, and I was like, I vaguely remember what I said. I said, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself by not generating more to be able to then hire more people to scale this message beyond. So you're not putting all the weight on your shoulders. To be able to invest in more nutrition and food and comfortable sleeping space for yourself, all that stuff, so you can serve at a greater level. And so I think I'm answering the question where I think if you're doing your life and you're being in service and being the best you can be and as kind as possible to people on that journey, then I think it's both admirable and it's cool to see what you could create financially as well with the impact you're creating in the world. But it's all about how you show up on the day-to-day, how you treat people in the journey of amassing the wealth. I think that's a good answer. If you've generated a lot of money, but you've been a jerk or you haven't been in service except for to yourself only, then that's not something to admire as a whole man perspective, I think. Yeah. That's my thought.
I think that's beautiful. I love that. And I remember that conversation as well. And I want to go back to that question you asked, though, because it's such a powerful question, that should we admire people who are wealthy? And I think we have to be careful about what we admire, because what you admire will be what your actions aspire towards. So,
and you'll start taking on those actions.
Correct. You'll start taking actions and behaviors and decisions towards what you admire. And so I would say that I've always admired people who had a purpose. That's what I admire deeply. When I meet someone, I'd say there's two things that I admire: purpose and humility. Like if I meet someone who has purpose, they're willing to sacrifice, they're willing to do whatever it takes, they are mission driven, they want to serve the world. It's why I was always a fan of yours from before we even met. and we knew each other because I was like, oh, here's a person who really wants to do good in the world. Here's a person who really wants to give. And so I think that's the first thing I look for. And then the second thing I deeply admire is someone who has humility, someone who I feel that they were really doing it from the goodness of their heart. So I think for me, my admiration has always been for those two things. And I don't think I can tell someone whether what they admire is right or wrong, but I would say that if you admire something, your actions are going to start dictating your journey in that direction.
Right.
And so you have to be careful what you admire because that's what you're going to chase.
Right.
And so I would say that I like admiring purpose and humility because I think they are worthy of a pursuit.
Sure. Who are some people that we could think about, who have amassed a lot of money, but also we feel like are purpose-driven and in service to whatever their gift is? Who are some people that we can think about?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about this beforehand, but I'm just curious about who is living that lifestyle right now.
Yeah, that's a tough question. But, and I think, I'd say we know a few people in our own world. I think people that I've always admired and looked up to are anyone from, like, I'd say, that's a hard question. There are people that are coming to my mind right now, but I'd probably say that I think Oprah's work's been phenomenal. Like the conversations she's had that have shifted culture or shifted humanity on her TV show.
Because she's brought in an entertainment, TV show, but brought in the elements of healing, of prayer, of meditation, of spirituality, of, creating consciousness in the planet, which I think is powerful. So she's bringing purpose to entertainment.
Yeah.
And she's built a massive empire financially, been rewarded for that service.
Exactly. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's the reason why I find this question so interesting, because if we're saying that spiritual people can't be rich, that means that spiritual people have to be poor. That means all the people that are rich are not spiritual.
Right.
Is that the world we want to live in?
No.
Do we want to live in a world where the wealthiest people or the most externally, people who have the most resources are people who don't have spiritual intention? I don't know if that's the world I want my kids to grow up in or the world that I want to live in. I would rather grow up in a world where the most influential people had a deep spiritual intention.
Yes. And with that spiritual intention, they were rewarded financially for their level of impact and service. The challenge, the interesting thing is, if you have that much humility and you have that much spiritual intention towards your life and service, does the money matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter as much, like the more you earn? And does it really impact the individual's life if they have $1 million or $100 million? And that's the interesting thing also.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing your point, because the perspective you gave to me a few years ago when you brought up that point, like, I remember having like hundreds of millions of views and then being 4 months away from being broke.
I remember this, man. It's crazy to me to think that.
Yeah, and it was really true. Like, I would sit in meetings and people would be like, how many views have you had now? And I would share that. And I was getting all this incredible feedback. And then I didn't have any money, and I was literally going to be broke in 4 months. And what I realized was that was negatively impacting the amount of impact I could have sustainably, long term. And it's what you said to me, that what if you're making money, but then you're investing that in your team? What if you're expanding and creating more opportunity? Like today, where we have teams across the world, you have your team here, I have my teams, who are also living their purpose.
Yes.
And we can only employ them because there's growth in this regard. And then they're getting to have a deeper impact. So to me, it depends on what scale of impact you want to have.
Yeah, and I think also spirituality for me is harmony. It's having peace and inner peace. And if you're financially stuck, or you're financially struggling, or you feel trapped in financial debt and confusion of financial aspect of your life, then I feel like that's holding you back from your spiritual progress.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out how to have harmony and balance in these areas of your life, and your relationships and your health and your finances. For me, it's so key, and going deeper spiritually in all of those so they're all abundant.
Yes.
If one is not abundant, then are you maximizing your spiritual capacities
Yeah.
of this lifetime?
That's beautiful. That's well put. Yeah.
And so I think and I think so many of us grew up thinking that money was the root of all evil, or people with money were bad, or this and this, or whatever we thought of. But I think it's time to start changing the narrative and saying, okay, I'm going to use money for good. And how can I make a commitment to myself to use some of my money to be in service of other people, not just all for myself or needing the flashy cars or things. We both like nice things. You like fashion and experiences. I love travel and adventure and healthy foods and investing in that. You know, we take care of our health. We have trainers and nutritionists, these things. I think it's important so we have more energy and capacity to be of service. So I don't think there's anything wrong personally with making a lot of money or having focus on profit and purpose.
Correct.
But I think you want to have both so you can scale both. There's a lot of people who are so well intended, who have big missions, but don't know how to make money to serve their mission. And they're doing a disservice to their cause because they haven't figured out the skill of copywriting or enrolling people in fundraising or sales or some skill to bring in revenue to support the cause or the mission. And I think that's where a lot of nonprofits struggle with these years, is they're not thinking about all these other things they have to do to serve.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and I like that, because I also want to clarify that for someone who is spiritual or is conscious or is awake, whatever word you want to use, or even is focused on personal growth or self-development, their goal is not profit. Their goal is their purpose, their mission, their service. But they recognize that this is something that they have to think about and organize around in order to serve the purpose. So I think it's more about what's your top priority. Like, you don't wake up in the morning every day going, how can I make more money today? Like, that's not the mindset. You wake up in the morning going, how can we serve more people? How can we have a greater impact? How can we help more people?
Yes.
And you realize that creating a profitable business or income is a part of that purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the clarity that we need.
yeah, our measurement for our company is to serve 100 million lives weekly to help them improve the quality of their life.
Exactly. It's not to make X amount.
It's not to make $100 million a year.
Totally.
But in the, okay, how do we solve this mission equation, which is we want to reach 100 million lives weekly. What does that take? Well, most of it is through video right now. Video, through audio content, through social media, through books, through these different ways to scale a message, right? A different way to scale a message, which takes money, resources, and a team to execute on these different challenges in business to reach that mission. And so it's thinking, okay, we need more people to support on the team. Well, that's going to take more money. So how do we make the money to hire people to serve the mission?
Yeah.
And through the process of figuring out the purpose equation of how to solve that purpose conversation, then you need to figure out money that's tied to it.
Yes. And I also want to make that point that you have to be really vigilant on this path so that you don't buy into your own hype, in the sense of you can convince yourself of anything. And you could convince yourself that you're serving people and you're doing this and doing that, and then you're making loads of money, and then you just convince yourself that it's all okay. And so, yes, you have to be more vigilant on this path. I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, it doesn't matter, it's all good. You've got to check yourself.
What do you mean, vigilant on what?
So you have to remain accountable in some way to make sure that you are continuing to do good with the greater facilities and responsibilities you get.
As opposed to, oh, I just made 5 million this year, 20 million this year, and I'm getting all these accomplishments and awards and recognition. So figuring out how to stay humble and confident.
And purpose-driven.
At the same time.
At the same time, to not get carried away by an opportunity because of that. And so what I'm saying is that I think people often say that, you know, like, the reason why people think you either have to be spiritual or financially successful is because they think, well, if you're going down the spiritual path, money can be a distraction, or if you're going down money, then spirituality will distract you. And that is true. That is real. Like, you can get really materialistic trying to be spiritual.
Sure.
And you can become distracted from your materialism by being spiritual. That is true. But the goal of life is to live in that paradox, like in that middle point of trying to figure it out. So I often say to people, like, I don't consider that and I know we both feel this way, we haven't figured it out. We don't know everything about everything, but I'm trying to toggle with that because I believe that the truth is in the middle. The truth isn't in the either or.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I want to talk about also how we have individually stayed accountable, humble in our growth and our trajectory individually, because there's at one point where I had no followers and one point you had no followers and we had no business. And now both of us have, an ascension of audience, of opportunities, of money, of accomplishments, awards, things like that. I'll ask you first, and then I'll answer. Stop
asking questions, Lewis. This is not the School of Greatness.
But I'm curious how you have managed the rise to financial gain over the last 5 years and audience gain and recognition gain. How have you, and I'll answer it myself, how have you personally stayed humble in the process of the rise financially?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, that's what I mean by the vigilance, like in the sense of you can't ever be complacent about your inner journey. So if at any point you think you're humble, you're automatically not humble. If you think you're...
So I need to stop saying that to my girlfriend. I'm so humbled now.
Yeah, it's like if you think you're humble, you're not humble. If you think you've been really grounded, you're not grounded, because that automatically cancels out the other. But at the same time, I would say that for me, what are my anchors? And I think I look at them as anchors. So my first anchor is impact is always greater than income. There is always more impact you can make. So I know that for me, what I'm trying to do with the work I'm doing is video was an entryway into a journey of transformation. I wanted people to move from videos, to listen to the podcast, to read the book, to come to events, to come to retreats with me in India. Like I want to help people go as far on their inner journey as they possibly can. That's my personal mission. Is if someone just wants to watch a 3-minute video and it makes them feel better, that's beautiful. But if someone one day wants to come with me to India and live the life I lived and have a deep inward journey, then I want to be able to facilitate that. I'm still building that bridge to people's deepest selves.
Yes.
And so the first thing that always humbles me and grounds me is I've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There's so much suffering and pain in the world. There is so much unrest in the world. There is so much trauma in the world. So we've got a long way to go.
Yes.
So all the awards and the views, they give you confidence that you're going in the right direction, but you know you're far away from the destination. So that's one thing. I think the second thing that really helps me is being around, still spending time with my monk teachers who have very different vision as to what is valuable in life.
Yeah, because they don't care about material possessions or money and none of it.
They don't care. And so they're not impressed by that. And so to be around people who don't admire certain things helps you lose taste for it. It's kind of like when I'm around...
You're just a man.
Yeah, like exactly.
Marcus Aurelius.
Go on.
Marcus Aurelius, the story is that Marcus Aurelius would walk through, I guess, the town and just have someone saying, "You're just a man," when everyone was praising his name and kind of bowing to him and saying, "You're like this God," right?
Yeah.
And it's having that accountability that you talked about, people in your life that admire you for who you are, not for what you're creating in the world, right? For just your kindness, your heart, your humanness, not the brand that you have built as an individual. And I think that's so important to have. My girlfriend, Martha, over Christmas,
love Martha.
They did it. She's great. Over Christmas, they have this little game that their family does where you pick out like a word that's going to be your word of intention for the year. And it's supposed to be the word you need. Like everyone picks out a word.
Beautiful. I love that.
And you hang it in an ornament that goes on like a tree. And then you look at it again the next year, and then you're always reminded of this word. And there's different words like confidence and self-worth and intention and all these things. And can you guess what my word was? And these are random, right? So you don't know what it is. You pick it out, and it's random.
Okay, let me think. Love?
That's what we've been talking about, which is humility.
Oh, right. No way. I don't think you told me that.
Yeah, I haven't. So it's humility.
Wow.
So she picked it out, and you read it in front of there's like 20 of her family members.
I had no idea about that.
And I was like, humility. They're all like, yes, you need that. I was like,
no, you were humble. No,
I know, but I was like,
I can say you're
I was
humble,
like, I feel like I'm pretty humble, but it's funny when you said that, like when you're saying you're humble, you need more of it. And I think the thing is, it's always a great reminder, whether you're super humble or not, it's a great reminder because life will bring things to humble you if you do not consistently stay humble in your life.
Yeah.
There's injury, sickness, attacks online or controversy, whatever might come up in the world, and it's going to continue to come up.
Yeah.
But as long as you have the accountability and the right people in your corner who call you out on your BS and also celebrate you when you're doing good things as well, I think that's important to have.
I agree. I think life is a journey designed to disconnect you from your ego and dissolve your ego. If you think about life as that is the journey.
Yes.
And so as much as you willingly hand over of that journey, the less it's being pulled away. And what I mean by that is, and it's what you said, when you really think about any success you have or any impact you've made, there is someone who has helped you get there directly or indirectly. So for you to say, I am self-made, it isn't completely true because there was someone indirectly or directly that helped you get there. So if I say that, people appreciate how I communicate ideas today or certain ideas, I have to thank my monk teachers who taught me that wisdom. Or if someone says, hey, Jay, you're really resilient or you've broken through a lot of challenges, but then you have to respect the people that tried to pull you down. And so
that gave you the opportunity to overcome adversity.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so either way, there have been people who have helped you get to where you are. And so you can't claim the ego of, I did this all myself.
And I think there's also something to be said for humility and receiving acknowledgement from others and to yourself.
Yes.
And celebrating what you've also created. I love the acceptance award of Snoop Dogg where he says something like, and I want to thank me.
Yeah,
I want to thank me for all the late nights, all the early mornings, all the hard work, and I thank me for never giving up on me.
Yeah.
And I think there is this over humility sometimes too, where people are like, well, I'll be like, hey, Jay, it was so amazing what you did. And when people say, it was nothing, it wasn't me, I get to praise everyone else. I think there's a spiritual way to receive accomplishments and be humble in your thank you, graceful in your thank you, receive it as well, because you are showing up in a big way.
100%.
So you can be humble and also gracious in your confidence.
Yes, I think that's a great point, and I completely agree with you. I don't think it's never either or. I think that's the point, that whenever anyone tries to make it, it's like, should you be humble or should you be confident? It's like, be both. Should I be successful or should I be spiritual? It's like, be both. You can be both. And we need to be both, because sometimes you are going to need to. I agree. When you reject praise,
what happens?
Or genuine acknowledgement, what ends up happening is you lose the opportunity for someone else to express gratitude.
To give.
You've blocked that ability for them to give.
You're robbing someone's gift.
Yes.
And that's a no-no.
No,
we'll talk about a whole nother session on the law of attraction and hustle.
Yes.
But there's something to be, and people that make money know how to receive, because they receive money. And there's a flow also. There's a flow to it. The ones who are really good don't hoard it, right?
Yeah.
They let it in and they let it out. It's like a cycle. And they're investing it and they're spending on people and they're building things. And they don't say, no, I'm not ready for money. Don't give it to me right now. It's the same thing. You don't want to block someone's acknowledgement or praise or opportunities and say, I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
Take it in, receive it, be graceful. And you can also be humble at the same time.
Yeah, use it as fuel. Yes. Don't let it go to your head.
Right.
But you use it as fuel. So if someone gives you praise, you go, oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. Now I'm going to use that to work harder.
Yeah.
Right? But you're not just using it to go, okay, it's gone to my head. Now I'm going to feel that. You're using it as fuel. And so,
And I think that's why everyone needs someone accountable to them.
yeah,
Whether that's your partner, I know Roddy is that for you probably. Martha is that way for me, where she will celebrate me, but she also just gives me great feedback if she thinks I'm being, over the top on something,
Yeah.
which I never try to be, but
yeah,
it's just her being there is a reminder to stay humble.
yeah,
Even if she doesn't have to say anything, it's just like, okay, I don't need to be boasting anything.
Yeah.
And having someone that you are inspired by in your life that can be that accountability is so key, I think. Having that community of not everyone that just says you're incredible all the time,
totally.
but someone who keeps you grounded and also supports your growth.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. And it's for me, the interesting thing, going back to our original question, is
Money and spirituality.
yeah, like, and going back to in context of this, is if you're proud of something that can be taken away, it will always leave you empty.
So you mean proud of your money?
You're correct. If that's all you're proud of what you've done, and ultimately whether you die with it or you lose it before you die, it is going to go somewhere else.
Right.
It's going to be transferred, even if that's to your children or to anyone else. Then that can be a very scary place to live. It can be a fearful place to live.
But you can never lose the impact you've made on people.
Totally, like that, and I think that's what I've noticed, is that purpose is the only thing that keeps giving to you, because it's such a it's the only thing that can give to you without needing anything else. I think we have to be careful about what we admire, because what you admire will be what your actions aspire towards. So,
and you'll start taking on those actions.
correct, you'll start taking actions and behaviors and decisions towards what you admire. And so I would say